Welcome, I'm glad you're here. This is Jennifer McGuire. Today I'm sharing a technique that I call scene changer cards. These are cards that have a scene on the outside, but then when you open it up, a different scene is formed. This is something that you can do with a variety of stamps and coordinating dies. I'm creating some cuter cards today with some cuter images after many requests to do that type of style of card. But keep in mind you can do this with a variety of stamps and coordinating dies. Today I have 3 card examples for you with this technique. Oh, and by the way, if you like creating cards without much bulk, even one-layer cards, this technique would work great for that. Okay, let's get it started with this first example. I wanted to show you the completed card first so you know where we're headed. On the front of the card, when it's closed, we have the scene with critters decorating a tree with a bold sentiment. When we open it up, we have a different critter and a different sentiment and plenty of room to write a personal message. Before we get started, I do want to show you the stamp sets that I'll be using today. I'm going to show you them all up front because I mix and match them throughout the video. First, we have the Mama Elephant Oh Merry Tree. I love this tree formed of little reindeer and elves and more. I'll be using that on my 3rd card today, but also that long sentiment along the bottom on 2 of my cards. And then this adorable stamp set called Holly's Reindeer. So you have lots of little reindeers with little decorations. We've got that sleigh there. Oh, and by the way, all of these stamp sets do have coordinating dies available. Then we have the Essential Tag Sayings. I'll be using one of these images on the inside of one of my cards. I like that there's a lot of occasions included in this, and they would all fit nicely on a circle. I'm a big fan of sentiments that work on circle die cuts. And then for bold sentiments, I'm always a fan of these style Mama Elephant sentiments. This is Make It Merry. You've got all of the greetings you see here. There are coordinating dies available. And I love how these really fill a card nicely. I'll be using this set on 2 of my cards today. And then we have Decorate the Tree. I'll be using this on my 1st card. And by the way, notice how all of these stamp sets work well together. That's one thing I really like about Mama Elephant. You can mix and match stamp sets together so you can get more life or more use out of them. And then we have this cute capybara stamp set. This is the Cappy Holidays from Mama Elephant. It's this STAMPtember collab with Mama Elephant and Simmons' Stamp. This is one of those that sells out very quickly and then it's gone forever. It's got some great images and fun little puns. I will be using one of the images from this set in my last card today. So again, I'll be mixing and matching these different sets together. These images work really well together so you can build different scenes. Okay, let's get started with this one. I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card that I'm putting into my MISTI stamping tool. I used Brutus Monroe's Not Your Mama's cardstock. This is a very, very heavyweight cardstock. It's 130 pounds, high GSM. It is heavy weight. The reason I chose it is I'm going to do some Copic marker coloring, and I didn't want the color to soak through to the other side. I'll talk more about that later. On the front of the card, I'm stamping this tree image from the Decorate the Tree stamp set that I just showed you. And I'm stamping it with the Copic Friendly ink from Gina Designs. So I'm stamping that on the front of the card. Then I will open up the card and stamp the same image in the same place, but this will be on the inside. So this is the area where you would write your personal message. By using a stamping tool, I can make sure both of the images are in the same spot on the front and the inside. Now on the front of the card, I'm going to stamp some other images, mixing and matching some of the sets that I just showed you. And again, stamping all of this in a black ink that I know won't bleed. This Gina Designs Amalgam Obsidian black ink is my favorite because I know I can stamp it and color it with whatever I want and it won't bleed. It works with Copic markers, it works with colored pencils, watercolor, and more. And then I stamped one of the bold sentiments there in the front center. All right, now I'll use the coordinating die for the tree and line it up with the tree on the front of the card. I'll open up my card and run it through my die cut machine. This creates a window on the front, and the stamped tree on the inside lines up perfectly. And the extra tree that we die cut from the front, we can save for another project. Now, I also stamped additional little critters on some extra white cardstock, so I can color those off screen. Then on the inside of my card, I'm stamping another critter. So we're just stamping a bunch of things here, some on the front of the card, some on the inside, and then some extras we'll die cut and add on top for layers. What you're seeing here is the scene that will be on the inside. So we have a different scene on the front and the inside. Now I did my Copic marker coloring off screen. I don't do well with Copic markers. I kind of struggle my way through. It's not something I'm really good at or enjoy. I just do it to get through, right? To be able to make cards. So I'm not going to show you my coloring method here. There are a lot of great coloring YouTube channels out there. This isn't one of them. I'm just showing you this technique of a scene changer card. So I did my Copic coloring of all of the images on the front, the inside, and then these extra ones here. These extra ones, I'm using the coordinating die to cut them out so that I can pop them on the front. But to give them a little dimension, I die cut some additional die cuts of the same little critters. Didn't stamp or color them, just cut them from some scrap white cardstock. And I'm gluing 3 of those extra die cuts behind my stamped and colored ones. This gives some dimension to those little critters. You could use foam squares if you want to, but this will hold up better in the mail, and it's using up some scraps that I had. I also did a little tree to go on the top, a little star to go on the top of my tree. So I'm using Gina K liquid adhesive here, Connect, my favorite, and I am gluing these little critters around that little tree window on the front of the card and the star on the top. So the reindeer over on the left is stamped and colored directly on the note card, but the other 2 critters are glued onto it, popped up a little bit. So we got a lot of look of dimension. You've got the tree that's set back, the reindeer that's flat there, and then the additional 2 critters there that are kind of popped up for dimension. Here I'm using some C1, C2, and C3 gray Copic markers just to do a little shadow below those images. I'm not good at this. I am not good at the shadows and all that. I'm just doing what I think works best, and I think it'll be fine, and the recipient won't be critiquing how I do my shading. All right, so now I am adding some little sequins. These are iridescent stars from Trinity stamps, and I'm gluing a few of them here and there on the front and inside. These are flat, so I'm able to glue some on the inside without adding too much bulk. If you don't have flat little confettis like this, you could always die cut little shapes from holographic cardstock, or you could use like a glitter pen to do little dots in the background. Now I kept my background white, but you could ink blend some blue skies or whatever. I just really wanted that bold color against a white background. To make these images stand out even more, there are a few things that I like to do. First, I like to use a black glaze pen, and I color in the eyes and the nose. This really makes them stand out. It gives a teeny bit of dimension, but a lot of shine, and it's super crisp black. So it's a great way to really make those faces pop out. I then used a tonic aqua shimmer pen on the little lights. By the way, I think he's holding a string of bells, but I colored them as lights for the tree. You can change your images up however you want. So this will give a little shimmer to those lights, and then I put some glossy accents on top so that it has some shine and a little bit of dimension, not too much. The card will still close nicely. And I did this on the lights and the star of the tree, and it's just a great way to add those little details which make these images just pop completely. All right, now here is the completed card. You've got this little scene on the outside, and then when you open it up, you still have the tree, but you have a different critter and a different sentiment, and plenty of room for a personal message. Now, because I used a super heavyweight white cardstock, you can notice when I open the card that the coloring I did with that reindeer on the front didn't bleed through to the inside. That Brutus Monroe Not Your Mama's cardstock is delightful. It makes an excellent card base and great for alcohol marker coloring. All right, here's a closer look. You can see those iridescent stars that we added. Oh, I did put a red gem for the reindeer's nose. You can see the black glaze on the eyes and nose that just makes it stand out even more. It's amazing how all of those little details add up to really bring a scene to life. Okay, let's do this next example. Now, I did a little bit of a ground with some light gray, nothing fancy, just something quick. I have a giant Post-it note here. I like to use these once in a while when I'm crafting, and I am masking off the bottom like ½ inch on the front of my card. I have a blending tool here and the Rainbow Splash Gravel ink. This is a great gray ink. It's not too warm, it's not too cool, it's just perfect. And I'm putting some soft gray ink along that bottom ½ inch. I will then open up the card, and on the inside where we would write our personal message, I'll do the same thing. I'm just eyeballing it. You can measure it if you want it to be exact, but really eyeballing it should work just fine. Notice that I knock a lot of the ink off my brush on that Post-it note first so that I don't bring too much to my cardstock and end up with harsh lines. I just want a soft blend across that edge of the Post-it note. All right, so now we have that little bit of gravel color or ground there on the front and the inside. All right, now let's line up our images. I have a sentiment and the sleigh image that I'm stamping onto the front of the card. I just love those bold cursive sentiments. Then I will remove that sentiment, but leave that sleigh there. We will open up the card and stamp the sleigh alone on the inside. So this is going to be where our window is. So by stamping the sleigh in the same place on the front and the inside, when I die cut the front, I know that the window will line up with the inside sleigh image. Now while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and stamp some critters on the inside. Again, I'm using the sets I showed you before. Most of these images are from the Holly Reindeer set. I just thought these reindeer had to be the cutest things I've ever seen, and I did a little present there. Now on another piece of cardstock, I will just stamp some additional images. These will be ones that I color and then die cut and add onto the front of the card for that bit of dimension. Once again, I will do my coloring off screen because I don't do anything fancy. Really do whatever type of coloring you're comfortable with. All right, now we need to die cut that window. So I will take the sleigh die and line it up with the sleigh on the front of the card. I'll run this through my die cut machine with the card open, and that will die cut a sleigh window on the front of the card that will line up with the sleigh stamped image on the inside. And this extra sleigh die cut we can save for another project. Now I have these extra critters. I did glue additional die cuts behind it for dimension, and I'll glue these onto the front. Now this, by the way, this kind of scene changer card is great because you don't have to do any masking. If you like the look of scenes but don't want to mess with masking, this is a great technique for you. By the way, Lila just popped into Wave High. She did some ink blending for me because I have that bum shoulder. But anyway, if you like the look of scenes but don't like to bother with masking, this is definitely something to try. Now I did use a light gray Copic marker to color the bottom of these die cuts so it matched the ground that it's standing on. I don't care too much about shadows and all that stuff, but other details that I'm good at, like basic things like coloring in black eyes with a glaze pen or adding glossy accents, I'll do those because I'm comfortable with those. And I'll skip the things like shadows and all that. Do whatever you're comfortable with and focus on that. All right, now here is the completed card. I did stamp a sentiment on the bottom inside, and that is from the tree stamp set I showed you at the beginning of the video. I added more of those little stars because I'm crazy about them, and those are on the front and the inside. I used the black glaze pen on the eyes, and I used a white gel pen just to add little dots to the cheeks. I just find that's a way to kind of make them stand out. And again, more details that kind of draw you into the images and kind of takes your eye away from the background where I really didn't add a whole lot. So you can see how you can use stamps and coordinating dies to do this technique in many ways. I'm going to demonstrate another without coordinating dies in a moment. But this is a great way to really put those coordinating dies to good use. And I have done this technique in a video many years ago. I will link to that video if you want to see some more ideas. But next, let's do a third card. Now this one, I didn't use a coordinating die for the window. Instead, I used a basic circle die. So if you have stamp sets that you can use that you don't have the coordinating die, this might be a good option for you. Just use a basic shape instead. So I have a note card here, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. This one doesn't have to be as heavyweight if you don't want to because we're not doing any coloring directly on the front of the card. Now I'm stamping the big critter tree image with black ink on the inside of the card only. So this is where we would normally write our personal message. I'm not stamping it on the front this time. And by the way, I think this ink pad finally needs re-inking after all these years. I got to remember to do that. Now, before I take this image off of my MISTI stamping tool, I'm going to stamp it quickly on scrap paper. I just stamp it without re-inking because I'm lazy. You can't really see it, but I assure you that I can. And I'm taking a circle die. This will be what I use for the window on my card. And I'm lining it up on that tree so that when I look through that circle die, it's filled with those critter images. So I'm just placing it right over the tree, centered up kind of towards the center bottom of that panel. I'll run that through my die cut machine, and then I'll take that negative space and line it up with the front of my card. So I have it lined up with the front of my card, and I'll take the die and pop it into that opening. It'll fit like a puzzle piece, and I'll take all that and run it through my die cut machine. That will cut a circle right on the front of my card in just the right position. And I love how it's just those little critters looking through that circle window. Then off screen, I stamped and colored this little Cappy from the STAMPtember stamp set. Now, I don't have the coordinating die, so I'm just going to fussy cut this. And to keep it simple, I am leaving that little bit of white trim. That little white trim will also help this to pop out against all the critters that will be behind it. And really, fussy cutting, I know it's not the most fun thing to do, but if you don't have the coordinating die set, sometimes it's not too hard if you have an image that's simple like this one. Next, I wanted to create that holographic circle frame that goes around that circle window. To do this, I'm using the same circle die that I used to create the window, and I'm cutting that from a scrap of holographic cardstock. Then I have another circle die that's slightly larger, and I'm lining it up right around the hole we just cut. If you have a circle stacking die set, that's what you would use to do this. Highly recommend having a circle stacking die set. I'll link to an option below. I'm putting glue on the back of that little holographic circle frame we just created, and then laying that right around the window. For a sentiment, I'm using the longer sentiment from the tree stamp set that I showed you earlier. It's the one with the tree of critters. And I actually cut that long sentiment. So I would have it in two parts. I have warmest wishes that I'll stamp on the front, and then I'll stamp the rest of the sentiment on the inside. Cutting your sentiments is fine to do. You can always mount them onto your acrylic block or in your stamping tool positioned back together and use it how it was originally intended. But by cutting it, you get more use from it. Here, it works great because part of the sentiment can be on the front and part can be on the inside. I put a little foam tape on the bottom of my image here to glue it right below that frame opening or the window opening. And there we have our little card. I did add some black glaze pen and some white gel pen here and there, and a few of those iridescent stars on the inside. But I love how when this is closed, you have this little window with a bunch of critters peeking through, right? And then you open it up and you have this giant tree. Now, there is plenty of room to write a personal message to the top of the tree to the left, like above that window on the inside of the card. And I just think this is a great way to create a unique card that has a surprise on the inside. So the whole idea with these scene changer cards is that you have a scene on the front of your card and a different scene on the inside. And thanks to creating the window on the front of the card, some of the elements can be seen in both of the scenes, right? But it changes a bit, so there's that surprise inside. So grab your stamps and coordinating dies and give this technique a try. If you're interested in what I use today, I have it linked below in my YouTube description. At the end here, I will link to a couple other videos, including the one that also demonstrates more ideas of this technique. I thank you for spending this time with me. I really do appreciate you being here, and I'll see you again soon.